trap without mountain.
All right, welcome back to X Squared Radio. I want to talk a little bit about this globalist effort that's going on right now, what's going to happen, the globalist strategy. It's important that you know you're not going to hear this in the news. We'll get it here on X Squared Radio because this is where the news week begins. You've been listening to reruns all week long. You probably got the Sunday shows today, and you're probably still getting over the rash, but that's okay because we're going to fix that tonight. I'm going to give you a little bit of information here to let you know what the globalist strategy is and what they have planned. It isn't good. It isn't good. And we talked a little bit about the possibility of civil war, which I think is minimal in the classic sense of the word, as far as, dividing the country up and saying, this is our land, that's your land, you stay there, we'll stay here. I don't think there's a chance of federal troops being sent in to do anything to anyone. I know you see a lot of the, whacked out millennials out there holding signs up saying, we're coming for your guns. Not with a sign, you're not. I mean, you can come, but it'll be amusing. But the threat word has been thrown around. For instance, they talk about Jared Kushner being a national security threat. They use the word threat probably 40, 50 times today on the news. It's a ridiculous word that's thrown around as part of dangerous rhetoric. It's to get you to think in a certain confrontational way, to lead us into what I call a conflict mentality. We don't want to have a conflict mentality. What we want to do is overcome darkness and fear with hope, light, and love. And this is a little different mentality. I will tell you that if you are armed, for instance, if you're a concealed carry holder, and you're armed at the time, you go to the mall, let's say, or you go to a swap meet, or you go to, to walk downtown somewhere. You have a little different feeling about yourself because you don't have fear. You have comfort. You have a sense of calm about you because you have an equalizer with you. That if one or two or four or five people come to say, I'm going to hurt you, I'm going to cause, sexual harm to you, I'm going to inflict pain upon you, that you can stand for yourself. You can defend yourself. You can say in your mind, in advance of any of this happening, you can say, I have protection. If any of this happens, I'm ready. And if you are a concealed carry holder, hopefully you have been to the gun range on a regular basis. You know how to clean that weapon. You know how to disassemble it and put it back together safely. You know how to pick it up and fire it. And you know how to group your bullets together in one place. At least you have this skill set that gives you this additional confidence. So likewise, if you're with your children or you're with friends or you're in an area where there are people who could be assaulted in such a way, you could protect them as well. This is the way the concealed carry law goes. You could protect yourself against bodily harm, imminent danger, sexual assault, and you can protect those people around you, children, women, things like that. Can you protect your stuff with a gun? No, afraid not. If you're being robbed, your car's being jacked, whatever, unless you fear for your life, unless you feel like they're going to do you bodily harm, they threaten you in some way with a knife or a bat or their fists, or they push you or shove you or kick you or choke you and knock you down, whatever, unless you fear for those things, you cannot draw that weapon. You certainly can't use that weapon. You can't shoot someone who's trying to steal your car. It's against the law to protect your stuff with a weapon. The weapon is there to protect you, your personal safety, your sexual integrity, and that of your children and your friends. There's just rules that go with it. So this is what you think of. You're trained. You know this. You've been through these classes. You understand this. Now, I'm not alone in this thought. There are 150 million armed Americans in this country. And in those 150 million armed Americans, there's well over 1.5 to 2 trillion rounds of ammunition. Believe me when I say this. If we were the problem, you would know about it already. We're not the problem. We're the stability. We are America. So what is the globalist strategy? Well, it's been around a long, long time, because for thousands of years, the earth was ruled by one man, one king, one monarch at a time. His army, his ships, his taxation system, his system of divine right is what ruled the world. There was no free choice. There was no upward mobility. There was no, hey, let's migrate to this other country and see if we can, start a new life. There was none of that. You were raised a Cooper, you stayed a Cooper. If you wanted to go away to school and learn mathematics and become a physicist, very difficult to do. You had to be chosen. You had to be selected. You had to be granted that privilege by the monarch or his assigns. It just didn't happen. It wasn't until the establishment of America, where life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, where the individual became protected by the rule of law. When we hear the words rule of law, this is what it means. It does not mean the rule by law. It doesn't mean that government can control anything. Government doesn't rule anything. Government governs. Law is there for everybody. But you have to understand the globalist strategy. The globalist strategy is that the laws don't apply to everybody. The laws don't apply to them. The laws only apply to you. That's what I'm talking about. This is the globalist strategy. When you talk to a socialist, it's the greatest thing ever. They lust after it. They push for it. They sacrifice everything they have to get it. Why? Because the socialist lives great. The socialist gets everything. They get the treasury, they get the army, they get the airplanes, they get the ships, the planes, the castles, the gold. They get it all. The socialist loves it. But the people that live under socialism are killed, they are aborted, they are sterilized, they are starved, they are destroyed in a myriad of different ways. The globalist strategy is fourfold. The first thing that they do is they infiltrate the education system. They make sure that the people that are being taught by the government are being taught the socialist way. That there is no individuality. You are part of a group. You're part of a mass. You're part of a class. You're a worker. You're a worker. You're a working family. You're a working person. You're a working poor. You're a worker. Education is there to teach you to get a job. Education is to teach you to fit into society and be a meaningful component of the collective. The collective. It's a collective. Don't misuse that word, collective. Humanity is not a collective. We are a collection. We're a collection of individuals, and we can be like-minded. But that doesn't mean that we're all taught the same thing. It means that we're taught how to learn, not how to work. Education. The second thing that they do is they take over entertainment. All the movies, all the songs, all the books, all the plays, all the literature. Every bit of entertainment is controlled. How is it controlled? Well, you can't control what a poet writes, can you? No. but you can control what gets published. You can't control what a movie maker does or what a screenwriter does. No, you can't. But you can control what movies get made. You can alter the theme of movies so that it supports the globalist strategy. You break down the American family. You promote lesbianism and gay rights and transgender and queer and pedophilia. You push all of these things through your film. Now, some of it is immensely entertaining. I just finished watching the Sense8 series on Netflix. I found it highly entertaining. But I am a mature, thinking adult. I can see the gay and lesbian, transgender, and queer agenda in that series. Some of the writing was very profound. Some of the filming was, well, embarrassing. Far too much sexual contact for me. But I'm a thinking, mature adult. I have perspective. I can make judgments on myself. I don't censor anything, but I can judge for myself what is going to stay in my psyche and what is not. I thought it was great art, but I also thought to myself, okay, of all the screenwriting that could be done, all the things that could be produced, why did Sense8 get funded? Where did it get the money? It got the money from, well, there's two main sources. The first source is the CIA. I know, you're going, wow, this guy's a conspiracy nut. I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding. Upwards of $80 billion a year are spent in entertainment support by the CIA. I'm not kidding you. And the other one is DARPA. I mean, you're going, what the hell does DARPA have anything to do with making movies? Well, it does, because DARPA is a military psyops support organization. Part of that support comes in making sure that entertainment gets pumped out in all the media, Amazon, Netflix, Hulu, Apple, the theaters, which are decreasing in popularity. It's more to the small screen stuff now. But there are, in this town in Charlotte, there are probably 2,000 screenwriters. That sounds like a lot, but we've made a lot of movies in this town. A lot of screenwriters in this town. How many of them actually get movies funded? 5, 3 maybe? Why? Because what is written is what the funders want on the small screen. And the funders are DARPA and the CIA. How is that done? How could that possibly be? Okay, let's just go back a little bit in time. We'll talk about Harvey Weinstein. You know that name, don't you? Harvey Weinstein? Oh, yeah, the sexual predator. You know, he touched the girls. Okay, whatever. But it's a culture. How does the culture work? How do these films get made? How does DARPA, how does politics, how does this money get into filmmaking? Well, here's how it works. Here's how it works. DARPA creates the funding arm. It has to get from the NGO, the non-government organization, to the filmmaker. How does that work? Well, let's take, for instance, Hillary Clinton. Very good friends with Harvey Weinstein. So what she would do as Secretary of State is she would make sure that money got funneled from DARPA and the CIA to Harvey Weinstein to fund the films. Of course, he got to pick the starlets. I'm not even going to talk about the process for casting, but you can imagine. But still, you could cast the most beautiful women in the world, but without the money, you ain't making no movies. So Hillary Clinton makes sure that DARPA and the CIA funds are given to Harvey Weinstein to make the movie. Shortly thereafter, Hillary Clinton and her friends, they go to Hollywood for a fundraiser. And they have, so much per plate, and it's going to be in this nice place. But of course, the end result is somebody's going to write a big effing check to the Clintons. Guess where that money comes from? You guessed it. It comes right from those CIA and DARPA funds. That's called money laundering. The money goes from the State Department, Hillary Clinton and the State Department and DARPA and the CIA, goes to Harvey Weinstein. Harvey Weinstein then sponsors the event. The Clintons go there. Harvey Weinstein then writes the check right back to the Clintons. And that's how it's done. $100 million goes from DARPA and the CIA to the film industry. The film industry turns around and writes $20 million back to the Clintons. Hence, the film industry gets $80 million. The Democrats get $20 million. It's all your money. And that's how it's done. And that's how $10 trillion got added to the budget, long and short of it. So, where were we at? Oh, yes, we were at education, we were at entertainment. That's how it's done. Oh, let's go one more. Okay, the next one is legislation. Legislation. The rules that the agencies make, thousands and thousands and thousands of regulations, not every year, every month. Every month, thousands and thousands of regulations are saddled upon American businesses. Not the big businesses, the small businesses. Why? Because those regulators are there to protect the big industries. They're there to protect the pharmaceutical industry by oppressing holistic medicine, by oppressing vitamins and supplements and, things like CBD oil, all this stuff. iAlife, everything they tried to suppress for a decade, they crushed it. They just crushed it. Why? Because you cannot diagnose, treat, or cure any disease unless the FDA says so. Can't do it. That's why you got to have that disclaimer. All those regulations are written in the car industry, in the energy business, in the communications business, in the software business. Everything you write, everything you do, everything you produce is regulated to protect the big industries that make up the corporate structure of the agencies, departments, bureaus, and administrations. They are the ones that write our laws. It's not Congress. Screw that. Congress writes one law, like section or 52 or 18 or whatever it is. But it's the subsections. It's the articles, the clauses, the subsections, the subparagraphs. Those are all written by the regulators. They have the force of law, and they do assess fines and taxes and fees and enforcement actions, and they put people in jail, and they take their property, and they do it all without a single bit of representation for you. No representation in that government at all. So, education, entertainment, legislation. What's the last one? Oh, yeah, litigation, justice system. So let's think about it for a second. The FBI was formed in 1935 by Franklin Delano Roosevelt. How did he do that? Well, there was already an organization called the Bureau of Investigation. Now, the Bureau of Investigation were some pretty bad dudes, man. They're pretty bad dudes. Killers, drug runners, bootleggers, numbers runners, mobsters, converted bad guys. I'm talking people that look like bad guys, they smelled like bad guys, they talked like bad guys, they hung with, slept with, and died with bad guys. But they decided to become law enforcement instead. And that's what they worked on. Well, they were so successful. That was formed in 1918. In 17 years, by 1935, President Roosevelt was so impressed with their work that he decided to make them a bureau. They became the Federal Bureau of Investigation in 1935. They were tasked with only one thing, and that is to protect the interests of the country. Well, that's a little bit ambiguous, isn't it? And it was. It was meant to be ambiguous. What it turned out to be in 1935 was, you protect the interests of the Democrat Party. Boys, that's what you do. You become the opposition research firm and the cleanup crew for the Democrat Party. And in those days, in 1935, 36, 37, all the way to when Roosevelt died in the middle of his fourth term as president, 4 terms, in the middle of his fourth term, what had happened was a fascist government had been formed. And Franklin Delano Roosevelt made no qualms about this whatsoever. He liked fascism. He talked about fascism. One of his best friends was Mussolini, one of the most famous fascists to ever live, other than Franco in Spain. Yeah, fascism. They liked it. Why? Because it was big corporate government. It was so easy to get things done. All you had to do was call up the boys down at Reynolds or Alcoa or Ford. All you had to do was call them up, and they would make you tanks and planes and jeeps and whatever you needed. No bids were necessary. We'll write the check. It was great. Everybody, no, wait a minute. Not everybody made money. The industrialists made money. The industrialists made money. And if you just take a little slash mark and put it right beside that, it became the military industrialists made money. It was so powerful. It was so pervasive that what used to be a war when needed economy became a war all the time, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, full-time war ever since. Full-time war ever since. And so this process of litigation, of suing companies, using the court systems to destroy the free enterprise system in the United States became paramount. It couldn't all be done at once. I mean, you could write laws, yes, but then eventually you had to go to court. Eventually somebody would violate that law. Eventually you had to have a magic word to make this work, to make law work. You had to have something called precedent. In other words, somebody has to break the law. Somebody has to be arrested or charged. Somebody has to be brought into court, and then they have to lose in court. And that creates a foundation. That creates the basis upon which the next action is taken. And then the next one, and then the next one. And carefully, over a period of time, using the FBI as the opposition research firm, all the industrial espionage and everything discovered by the FBI under these regulations, over a period of time, the actual agencies, departments and bureaus and administrations took on their own police forces, like the IRS has their own cops, the EPA has their own cops, the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, they have their own cops, they have their own armies. The Department of the Interior has a mercenary force called the Bureau of Land Management. It's one of the most awesome private armies in the entire country. And these armies are used to establish actions based upon these court precedents. So over time, what happened where this globalist strategy was, we will, over the decades, we will engineer our cases. We will choose our cases very carefully. You watch it every day on the Supreme Court. You see lots of cases that come before the Supreme Court and they throw them out. Why? Because, well, they don't have a standing, or it's not a good, clean case, or it has this flaw or that flaw. Why? Because they're looking for a case that they can take so that when they make their judgment, when these 9 Supreme Court justices end up with their majority ruling, you now have a precedent. You now have Roe v. Wade. You now have, gay rights. You now have these things are put in place carefully, and they become the law of the land. So you use education, you use entertainment, you use legislation, and you use litigation. These are the 4 strategies that the globalists use. When we come back at the bottom of the hour, I'm going to explain to you how this becomes practical in 2019. Tomorrow, actually. Tomorrow. Today is Sunday. Tomorrow is Monday. Tomorrow, you're going to see the subpoena cannon fire. It's going to be like, AC/DC, Battleship. It's going to be unbelievable. Every friend of Donald Trump is going to be attacked full on tomorrow morning. But tonight, we're going to talk about it. We'll be right back after this. Don't go away. More X Squared Radio coming at you. YouTubers, hang on. I have to disconnect because of my bumper music. But as soon as we get that changed out, we'll go straight through. Don't go away, YouTubers. Just disconnect. Come back in 3 minutes. We'll